everyone, Alexa Dunn here, and today I am going to be discussing writing consistent characters. Specifically, I want to address the problem where you have a situation where you have a character's actions at points in the book supporting the plot, but not the character, i.e., when you've written something and you have a character act in a very specific way because you need them to do that thing in order for your plot to happen, and this most often is going to lead to a very inconsistent character. Generally speaking, I do think this is an editing problem, though with practice you can work on this in drafting, but I don't want you to pull your hair out stressing out on your first draft. So often on a first draft, we do need to kind of vomit onto the page, especially if you're a discovery writer rather than an outliner, but even an outliner can have this problem where you know that something critical has to happen, and in order for it to happen, you need, for example, someone to start an argument or betray someone, but then you're done and you're like, oh no, this feels like a 180 turn of this character. So again, I feel it's an editing problem because I think that when you're drafting, you should do whatever you need to do to push through on your draft. So this ends up being a problem because if you don't change this and a reader ends up reading it, yes, I have seen this in published books, they're going to have emotional whiplash or even just normal whiplash because they think they understand who a character is and where they stand, and then they do something completely out of character. This is essentially, if you're from the fanfic world, writing OOC, where someone feels out of character. But of course, you are not writing in an established universe, so your job is to establish your characters and create a baseline for what that character is. And then if you betray what that character is and what that baseline is, and you have them do things that aren't organic to their character, well, it's your job to fix it. Because as a reader, it makes them confused, it makes them angry, frustrated. In a book I read recently, it blew the twist because there was something that a character did and I was like, okay, they're being set up as the villain. It's incredibly obvious, and it's the author's job to smooth that out and fix it. You can still have the character do the thing that you need them to do, but your work as an author is to then fix everything else to match, or you have to throw out the thing that isn't working. You basically have a choice to make and work to do. So far, I've mostly been talking about antagonists or love interests or side characters, but man, when it's your main character who is inconsistent, you have a base book problem. Inconsistent main characters can create a lot of distance between the reader and the character. It can make them harder to relate to, and thus it messes with the emotional reading experience for your reader. I tend to believe that whatever character you choose as your main character or a POV character or characters, your reader is following them, and you need to take great care with your character and your plot to lead your reader on an emotional journey. And if you have an inconsistent main character, your reader is zipping up and down like this. And again, because it can create annoyance and anger, you can end up with a reader who hates your main character because they are inconsistent. And there is a difference between an unlikable character and inconsistency, though I would say often an unlikable character is inconsistent. Okay, so since the big question is, what do you do when you have an inconsistent character? These are some of the questions that you can ask yourself about that character. What does that character want? Every character in your story should have a goal. Obviously, main characters are going to have goals that most impact kind of the plot and the conflict and the stakes. Antagonists often as well. And because I have most often seen inconsistent character work in antagonists, I think simply because antagonists are very difficult to write because you need them to be not too obvious, and usually they do interact with your character and then you have to write a turn. They should want something. And what's important when you're analyzing their want is also thinking about their backstory and the rounder sense of their personality. Use this with any character. So they want something, so clearly they have a goal, and if it's an antagonist, they have a goal to work against your main character. So as part of the mechanics of that goal, that character should aim not to reveal their hand. So part of writing consistent character work for you is to come up with personality traits this character would have developed as part of their backstory to compensate and basically walk through the world toward their wants and their goals without revealing their hand. So most often with an antagonist who feels inconsistent, you need to balance their charm and ability to act while still giving your readers little hints that something could be up. They essentially have to be well-rounded enough that it isn't, I'm sweet and wonderful, but I betray you. You have to work on character nuance with a character like this so that it doesn't feel like an about face. You also generally have to think about how any given character in your book would really organically react to something. This is an area where I see a lot of character inconsistency, where you need a character to react in a certain way, say to your main character, or you need your main character to react to someone else in a certain way to drive the plot forward. But as a reader, you're like, wait, they've never been moody and argumentative before, so why are they doing it now? Or why are they crying? You need to really think about the type of person your character is, any of these characters, and how they would organically respond to something. Not how you would respond unless they're just like you, and not necessarily how you need them to respond, though. If you need them to respond in a certain way, you have to change the character to fit the reaction to make the reaction organic. Or you change the reaction. There's no other way around it. Either way, you have to make changes. If you decide to keep whatever the inconsistency is, your job is going to be working breadcrumbs, essentially foreshadowing through that character so that that reaction then makes sense. Essentially, you're going to be doing a character arc edit so that whatever this moment or this turn is makes sense. But this brings me to the next bit, which is, should you keep it or should you get rid of it? So you're going to have to do some soul searching about how important whatever this moment is, whatever moment it is where you have character inconsistency, and you can get your beta readers to talk to you about this, like ask them to look for moments where something felt out of character, and then you have to ask yourself, how important is this thing to me? So for example, if the thing that has led to inconsistency is a major plot twist, usually you can't get rid of it unless you want to completely rewrite your plot, which might be a choice that you make. But more often, I have done this. By the way, I am someone who has written an inconsistent character in a draft one, and then my job is to fix it. So if it's a plot twist kind of thing, again, this happens with antagonists and love interests very, very often. Conflict drivers, people who lead to change in the story. Well, you want to keep the change, you like the change, well then you're going to have to rewrite the entire character arc. Have I done this? Yes, it is a lot of work, but if you want to keep the thing, you're gonna have to do the character work so that the inconsistency is no longer inconsistent. But if there are cases where these inconsistent character moments are in scenes where it's not a big plot twist, but it's more a micro conflict driver, I mentioned the example of, well, you need to drive the main character forward so they get into an argument, but maybe that's inorganic. Again, you have a choice. You can throw out that part of the scene and basically revise to come up with a different bridge to get your character to where they need to go. Or again, you have to rewrite the character in question so that their reaction becomes organic rather than inorganic. So essentially, you have to make a decision, and once you make a decision, your job in revision is then to tweak and rewrite the whole character so that their end game, the direction you're driving them to, makes sense. It's all on the path of their journey rather than making a sharp right. There's always going to be a different solution depending on your specific character inconsistency problem, and ultimately it is up to you because this is a revision problem. You're probably going to have to do semi-major rewrites either way, but it's up to you what kind of rewrites you want to do. The worst thing you can do as an author is dig in your feet and do nothing. If you're getting feedback from more than one source, or honestly, even if it's just one source, but you trust that source that this really doesn't make sense to me, why would this character do that? You should definitely listen. I promise you, if one person, especially a trusted source, but if especially multiple people find something, your readers are going to find it too, and this can lead to problems. That said, you can't make everyone happy, and ultimately they are your characters and you kind of have to trust yourself, but it's a balance of knowing when, oh yeah, I did that, whoops, and no, I've got this, I know what I'm doing. So it's a delicate balance. It can scale from being mildly annoying to blowing your plot twist and ruining a book for someone, so Can also kill romance. That's also an example I had recently, where a character clearly had to do something to drive conflict and they did it, and I was like, oh, I don't ship you anymore. I hate you now. So you do have to be careful. Your character shouldn't just be serving your plot should be serving your characters. I think that's the main takeaway here. Characters are incredibly important, and so you have to consider them being well-rounded and balanced and having everything they do make sense with the plot, but really it's your plot supporting your characters rather than the other way around. So that is your primer on inconsistent characters, why they're bad, and some of your options for examining the problem that you have on the page and how you are going to fix it. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it, and if you're not already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that. I post new videos 2 to 3 times a week. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, guys, happy writing!